Welcome, weary travelers, to the medieval tavern, that hallowed sanctuary where history unfolds in the flicker of candlelight. Tonight, we journey to the smoky, boisterous heart of medieval society, where the boundaries between classes dissolve in rivers of ale. The tavern, an unsung pillar of every township, the unofficial hub of news and gossip, and perhaps the only establishment where knight, peasant, and wandering minstrel could find themselves equally intoxicated and equally vulnerable to pickpockets. Far more than a mere drinking house, the tavern served as a crucible where danger, merriment, and pestilence intermingled beneath humble thatched roofing. Before we embark on our historical sojourn, I invite you to support this endeavor. Like and subscribe if you find value in these historical narratives. I'm curious, from which corner of our modern world are you joining this medieval exploration, and at what hour? The global nature of our historical community never ceases to fascinate me. Now, dim your lights, perhaps engage a gentle fan for ambient sound, and let us ease into tonight's historical journey together. Imagine yourself trudging through the mire of a medieval thoroughfare, assaulted by the pungent smelling of equine odor, wood smoke, and questionable culinary enterprises. Recent rainfall has rendered everything treacherously slick, including your sole pair of footwear. Fatigue weighs upon you, hunger gnaws within, and you've narrowly avoided collision with the turnip-laden cart, not once, but twice. Your parched throat demands relief. How does one locate a tavern in a medieval settlement without illuminated signage, contemporary reviews, or modern navigation? You rely on the most ancient of directional tools, your auditory senses. Follow the cacophony. Beyond the blacksmith's rhythmic hammering and the fishmonger's enthusiastic declarations about freshly caught eels lies a distinctive symphony of revelry, disputes, and someone performing an impassioned ballad concerning a goose. And there it stands, a listing timber structure, canting slightly, as though the architecture itself has imbibed excessively. Suspended above the entrance, a wooden placard bears a crude illustration of ... Perhaps a barrel, a bear, possibly both. Regardless, you have arrived at your destination. The medieval tavern awaits. The threshold is slippery with spilled libations, and as you heave open the substantial iron-hinged portal, it emits a protracted creak of such theatrical quality it could qualify as entertainment. Instantaneously, you're enveloped in warmth and a rich aromatic tapestry of wood smoke, sodden wool garments, stale fermented beverages, and mysterious meats. A sensory greeting as forceful as an inebriated handshake. You have arrived. Within, the ceiling hangs perilously low, forcing tall patrons to stoop and intoxicated ones to suffer cranial collisions. The floor is not figuratively, but literally earthen, though partially concealed beneath straw in a futile attempt at cleanliness. Here, you'll find no private seating, no service staff bearing menus, and certainly no hushed conversations. This establishment offers but two states of being, uproarious or shuttered due to conflagration. You identify an unoccupied space upon a tilting bench near the hearth, though it glistens with something indeterminate. Prudence dictates you refrain from inquiry. Nearby, an animated disagreement concerning poultry theft unfolds. Kana lies unconscious, a serving implement still clutched in his grasp. A monocular canine gnaws contentedly upon a bone beneath a table, as if paying tenancy. Friend, this merely constitutes the entrance. Your arrival is but moments old, yet already the atmosphere promises an evening destined for either cherished memory or deliberate forgetting. As the substantial tavern door closes firmly behind you, darkness envelops your senses like damp woolen fabric, simultaneously warming, discomforting, and vaguely suspect. Your vision adapts gradually. Candlelight dances across soot-blackened walls, casting animated shadows that imbue even the furniture with an air of belligerence. The hearth blazes in the distant corner, serving dual purpose as heating source and perpetual fire hazard. Smoke hangs languorously in the air, reluctant to exit through the chimney potentially obstructed by avian remains. Yet, the most overwhelming assault comes not from noise nor heat, but from the olfactory experience. A medieval tavern's fragrance constitutes less an aroma than an emotional ordeal. Predominant notes of ale, warm, acidic, generously splashed across every surface. Underlying this perspiration, accumulated over years, human, equine, and possibly mythological. Add subtle hints of moldering bread, damp straw, and the whisper of simmered alliums, creating an aromatic composition no perfumer has dared replicate. Tables bear the carved history of countless patrons, initials, crude artistic endeavors, and scars from bladed implements. They waver with a certain obstinate dignity. Benches protest beneath the weight of mud-caked footwear, heavy outer garments, and questionable life choices. The earthen floor, as promised, lies layered with straw intended to absorb spillage, expectoration, and occasional unconscious customers. Each step requires caution. One misstep might plunge your foot into substance of texture best left undescribed. The assemblage of patrons functions as a living entity. Raucous laughter erupts in one corner, while two individuals debate porcine valuation in another. A woman forcefully deposits her drinking vessel, sacrificing half its contents without eliciting reaction. A neighboring patron regards you with the bewildered expression of someone either engaged in profound contemplation or struggling with the fundamental concept of seating. Someone nearby expels a sneeze, prompting collective withdrawal from all patrons to the left. Yet, despite this comprehensive assault upon modern sensibilities, an undeniable allure persists. The tavern pulses with vitality, raw, unrefined, entirely unfiltered, medieval society's communal nexus, albeit lacking hygiene and quadrupling the volume. You claim your seat. It exhibits dampness. It likely harbors a curse. Nevertheless, temporarily, it belongs to you. Initial assessment reveals that the tavern's architectural arrangement suggests furniture placement during seismic activity, subsequently deemed acceptable. You'll find no floor plan, no designated refreshment area, no intimate alcoves, merely a haphazard distribution of tables, benches, barrels, and occasional wooden containers repurposed as seating. Everything stands either excessively proximate or distant, contingent upon your level of inebriation. The hearth constitutes the solitary focal point. A substantial open flame roars against one wall, valiantly providing warmth, illumination, and a considerable dose of indoor smoke inhalation. Surrounding it, patrons cluster for comfort like moths drawn to illumination, but clutching vessels. Those fortunate enough to secure premium positions monopolize the warmth. The remainder, well, that's the purpose of ale. What passes for a counter typically comprises a substantial wooden plank balanced across twin barrels, sagging beneath the weight of vessels, drinking receptacles, and forearms. Behind stands the tavern proprietor, simultaneously dispensing beverages, shouting directives, and directing the ominous gaze of outstanding payment from Tuesday previous toward one particular corner patron. Menus remain non-existent. Inquire about available offerings and steel yourself. Responses typically include ale or silence and patience. Narrow staircase, possibly original, definitively splintered, ascends to upper chambers. Squinting reveals footwear suspended from a banister post. Whether this serves decorative purpose or warning remains unclear. Some establishments feature a rear chamber, perhaps for storage, perhaps for illicit gambling, perhaps the final destination of anyone who insulted the barmaid. Discretion suggests avoiding the question. Walls bear the stains of candle soot. Windows disappear behind greasy textiles or animal hides. Every surface bears the polish of countless elbows, boots, and spilled beverages from generations past, possibly poultry as well. Somehow, despite or because of this chaos, functionality prevails. Everyone understands where to go, how to sit, when to vocalize, and when to duck. Organization may be absent, but vitality abounds. Every medieval tavern acknowledges one ruler, neither local nobility nor tax collector, but the tavern keeper. Though crownless, make no mistake, this individual orchestrates everything: quill parts, culinary master, server, accountant, childminder, and arbiter of taproom justice. The tavern keeper represents a single-person institution, tolerating no impropriety. If male, likely constructed barrel-like with appendages, weathered, irascible, and hewn from preserved meat and regrettable decisions. If female, is frequently observed, sharper than a blacksmith's implement, and capable of silencing an entire establishment with a singular glance. Regardless, they've witnessed everything, heard worse, and removed bloodstains from straw before breaking fast. They acknowledge regulars with subtle nods, strangers with skepticism, and troublemakers with drinking vessels to the cranium. Behind the counter, they maintain mental record of payments, debts, and excessive consumption, accomplishing this without written documentation, medieval literacy being uncommon. Tavern memory, however, inspires terror. The proprietor establishes atmosphere. During pleasant moods, the establishment hums contentedly. During foul temperament, consume rapidly and reserve your wit. They officiate every dispute, adjudicate every fraudulent incident, and initiate defensive measures when altercations erupt. One does not antagonize the tavern keeper. Their omniscience encompasses debtors, adulterers, and those arriving under false identity. Require information. Compensate the barkeeper. Seek protection. Maintain proximity. Desire favor. Fervently. You didn't damage a vessel recently. Some employ assistants, offspring, spouse, or orphan, effectively adopted and tasked with transporting barrels twice their mass. These helpers distribute beverages, cleanse floors, and endeavor to avoid spillage or trampling by intoxicated patrons. While the tavern may appear chaotic, it represents a delicate ecosystem, and central to all, commanding like a storm deity in protective garment, stands the singular individual, maintaining beverage flow and preventing structural collapse into riot. The tavern keeper finally settled upon a protesting bench, navigating elbows and spilled sustenance. Your parched throat and damp footwear remind you of the primary objective, refreshment, but anticipate neither curated beverage selection nor polished drinking vessel. This medieval establishment offers limited, tepid, and potentially hazardous options. As you settle into the tavern's boisterous embrace, your parched throat demands satisfaction. The beverage selection, however, is not what modern sensibilities would recognize. Each offering tells a story of medieval ingenuity and necessity. Ale stands as the cornerstone of medieval refreshment, cloudy, robust, and alive with fermentation. Brewed in modest quarters, where even the tavern hound might slumber. This unfiltered elixir arrives thick with sediment, grain husks, yeast colonies, perhaps even remnants of the previous patron's facial hair, temperature control being non-existent. You receive it precisely as the ambient air dictates. The duration of its residence within the wooden cask remains a mystery best left unexplored. One simply imbibes and entrusts fate with the outcome. Mead presents a deceptively sophisticated alternative fermented honey transformed into potent libation. Production varies dramatically. The tavern keeper's own creation might deliver transcendent sweetness or evoke the sensation of angry bees and profound regret. This honeyed beverage typically graces the vessels of nobility, celebration participants, or the occasional minstrel insisting upon compensation in precious metal or fermented honey. Cider offers another possibility. It's crafted from orchard bounty, either freshly harvested or recovered after substantial ground contact. Its profile tart, embracing a rise in vessels bearing evidence of previous service, potentially transitioning to soup receptacles by morning light. This beverage predominates in orchard-abundant regions, or satisfies those seeking sufficient intoxication to render the neighboring patron's aroma imperceptible. Wine exists nominally, though, unless you've arrived in Mediterranean regions or during noble visitation, expect dilution, sourness, and delivery with palpable derision. Quality vintages remain reserved for ecclesiastical figures, aristocracy, or the merchant recently enriched through substantial salt commerce. Arta represents the most perilous selection, harboring invisible pathogens with lethal potential. The fuel expenditure required for purification through boiling and scarcity of uncontaminated wells explains why even children consume ale. The objective transcends pleasurable concerns, survival beyond early childhood without succumbing to intestinal affliction. Precision measurement and artisanal preparation remain foreign concepts. Your beverage arrives in vessels fashioned from timber, earthenware, or metal alloy. Many retain evidence of yesterday's sustenance. You elevate your container, perform olfactory assessment, and sample cautiously. Despite warmth and bitterness, a curious satisfaction emerges. Within medieval tavern confines, any potable substance unlikely to cause immediate expiration qualifies as exceptional. Having survived your beverage, attention shifts to sustenance. Your stomach's protest reminds you of dawn's distant meal, likely composed primarily of cereal grain and despondency. Nourishment beckons, though expectation management proves essential. No culinary roster exists, no service attendant materializes, and dietary accommodation remains utterly foreign. Medieval tavern dining protocol involves inquiring about remaining provisions and hoping for relative warmth and minimal mysteriousness. The establishment's culinary centerpiece typically manifests as pottage dense stew incorporating whatever grains, vegetables, and questionable proteins circumstances provided. Its preparation began days prior, with daily ingredient incorporation and without component removal. The result represents less conventional meal and more culinary historical archive. Should animal protein feature, celebrate modestly. Likely candidates include rabbit, metropolitan avian species, or poultry that ventured excessively near thermal sources. Game meats oscillate between delectable and questionably preserved, seasoned primarily with resignation. Your vessel comprises wood or clay. Utensils either personally carried or anatomically provided. Most travelers maintain personal cutting implements, rendering dining a self-equipped affair. Napery remains aspirational, your garment sleeve or communal textile bearing evidence of countless previous services must suffice. Bread invariably appears dense, dark, formidable, more assault implement than nourishment. Recent production yields softness. Extended storage produces weaponized hardness. It accompanies cheese, aromatic of aged footwear, and developing sentience. Occasionally preserved aquatic species or fermented egg products supplement offerings. Special provisions merely indicate excess inventory requiring consumption. Flavor remains optional, texture unpredictable. Nevertheless, illuminated by flickering flames, surrounded by cacophony, clutching warm sustenance, the experience transcends its components. Satiation occurs, warmth pervades. If scrutiny of floating matter remains minimal, comfort potentially emerges. Fine dining remains emphatically absent. This represents sustenance as survival discipline. Having secured seating, preferably unmarred by embedded cutlery, attention diverts to the primary entertainment, humanity itself. The medieval tavern functions as prototype information, exchange vociferous, disorganized, semi-factual, and committed to excessive personal disclosure. Adjacent sits an agriculturalist, complexion inflamed, several beverages consumed, repeatedly narrating identical bovine birthing complications. Physical contact with your shoulder punctuates narration, suggesting either long-standing acquaintance or suitable replacement for his customary porcine drinking companion. Distant corner accommodates cloaked, solitary figure nursing beverage with deliberate slowness. Potential identities include ecclesiastical, fugitive, highwayman, or individual pathologically averse to visual engagement. Unsolicited conversation promises potential nocturnal disappearance behind outbuildings. Fireside, armored combatant regales assembled listeners with martial narratives incorporating mythical reptiles. Foreign adversaries and conversational weaponry. Factual content remains negligible. Audience interest persists undiminished. His vessel remains replenished, his listeners amused. Nearby, perspiring merchant vociferously announces grain valuations, unsolicited by any present. Currency display suggests imminent nocturnal redistribution of wealth. Gaming enthusiasts engage with cubic probability devices upon warped surface, expressions intensely focused. Deception occurs, obviously. Observational awareness exists without intervention. Confrontation likely postponed until beverage depletion. Stringed instrument performer occupies corner position. Vocal delivery faltering during elevated notes of romantic composition bearing suspicious resemblance to spontaneous creation. General acceptance prevails, appropriate attire and tonal accuracy representing improvement over previous evening's entertainment. Female presence navigates assembled patrons, some employed by establishment, others pursuing independent enterprise. Their demeanor perceptive, assured, categorically resistant to misconduct. Interaction ranges from amicable to potentially violent, depending upon conversational approach. Juvenile participants dart between assembled adults, acquiring discarded comestibles or currency. Intervention remains absent accepted's systemic component. Every patron simultaneously observes, consumes, strategizes, and collectively disregards unconscious individual beneath furniture. This establishment transcends refreshment and sustenance provision. It constitutes living performance art. Tonight, we participate as ensemble member. K. Disregard lutes and ballads momentarily. The authentic soundscape of medieval tavern environments transcends musical composition. Rather, it manifests as chaotic symphony. Initial notes emerge from vessel contact, dozens striking wooden surfaces in celebration, negotiation, or inebriated miscalculation. Some produce pleasant resonance, others shatter conclusively. Both outcomes elicit approval. Subsequently, laughter erupt, profound, voluminous, reminiscent of untamed wildlife. Comprehension frequently proves elusive. Agricultural laborers find amusement in herelated observations. Armored nobility chuckles at culinary terminology. Religious practitioners experience uncontrollable respiratory amusement upon specific avian reference. Inquiries remain inadvisable. Vocalization accumulates in competitive layers, each exceeding previous volume, contesting dominance like territorial fowl. Arguments coexist with narratives, taxation complaints, and scriptural misrepresentation supporting wagers. Beverage purveyor shouts directives while addressing airborne insects. Service personnel verbally reprimand inappropriate physical contact, or repetitive beverage requests echo like military incantation. Corner musician with imperfectly tuned instrument and incomplete string complement cycles through limited chord progression, occasionally transitioning to verses addressing romantic disappointment, recovered poultry, or aristocratic wardrobe malfunction. Audience attention materializes primarily when lyrical content references present company, potentially resulting in entertainment enhancement or physical hazard. Liquid disruption occurs. Respiratory expulsion achieves structural vibration. Seating displacement results in continued oration from floor level, presented as intentional relocation. Cane background accompaniment includes canine vocalization, inexplicable caprine presence, and furniture movement producing acoustic phenomena resembling meteorological disturbance. Though lacking tranquility, rhythmic qualities emerge. Occasional ambient silence materializes spontaneously rather than deliberately. Duration approximates 3 temporal units before heroic intestinal acoustics resume collective soundscape. This constitutes essential ambience rather than peripheral distraction, the establishment's vital signs. Raw, unrefined, persistently animated, attentive observation eventually reveals a pattern within disorder. Similar to other tavern aspects, volume intensifies proportionally with duration. As fermented beverage circulation increases and culinary consumption progresses, tavern transformation occurs. Functional transition extends beyond refreshment and sustenance provision to medieval gambling establishment, lacking aristocratic refinement while emphasizing vociferous participation. Recreational wagering becomes evening focal activity, attracting participants ranging from battle-experienced soldiers to barefoot juveniles with borrowed probability devices. Regulatory structure, officiating personnel, and governance remain conspicuously absent, merely fractured wooden surface. Modest currency collection, an implicit understanding regarding imminent dignity forfeiture. Cubic randomization implements dominate carved from osseous material, timber, or miscellaneous available substances. Their percussive interaction with horizontal surfaces evokes meteorological comparison, followed by emotional expressions spanning celebration, dismay, and supernatural accusation. Universal skepticism regarding implement integrity coexists with universal implementation. Co-alternative wagering involves laminated pictorial rectangles in more sophisticated establishments, hand-illustrated, substantially worn, and invariably incomplete. Procedural guidelines fluctuate based on explicator. Objectives variously include numerical supremacy, symbolic alignment, or spontaneous rule generation. Its comparison to contemporary card recreation applies with additional physical component. Wages transcend conventional currency, spanning coins to tankards to livestock. Indeed, a goat served as steak. Another gambled footwear, while a third wagered personal liberty until dawn. Predictably, freedom was forfeited. Established patrons demonstrate remarkable dexterities, whipped, shuffling, deliberate rolling, expressions excessively amiable. Deception constitutes recreational component. Concealed randomization implements visibly marked playing surfaces, suspicious respiratory indication coinciding with fortunate participants, forward inclination. Substantial victory necessitates communal beverage provision or risk nocturnal confrontation. Significant defeat requires feigned intentionality, while gradually repositioning, seating toward egress. Supplementary competitions materialize spontaneously. Strength assessment through upper appendage confrontation. Digital warfare and perennial favorite maximum consumption without horizontal positioning. Victors receive audible appreciation. Defeated individuals secure subterranean accommodation and cranial discomfort persisting until subsequent commercial gathering. Despite procedural ambiguity and irrational stakes, participation proves compulsive. Within medieval tavern contexts, fortune transcends mere recreation, representing hazardous engagement with financial stability, personal dignity, and potentially lower garments. Nocturnal progression deepens and environmental conditions intensify through thermal accumulation and atmospheric moisture. Alternative performance emerges. Verbal, musical, confidently fabricated presentation commences. Medieval narrative tradition initiates. Melodic entertainer clears respiratory passage from corner position. Manipulating imperfectly adjusted stringed instrument producing acoustic similarities with aged footwear. Dental incompleteness contrasts with unwavering self-assurance. Dramatic gestural introduction precedes romantic tragedy. Recitation knightly figure experiencing aquatic humanoid infatuation, culminating in noble submersion during poetic delivery. Universal skepticism coexists with universal attentiveness. Establishment protocol prioritizes entertainment above factual accuracy. Surrounding communal surfaces, participation expands beyond professional performers to fermented courage patrons with narrative compulsion. One individual professes unseen physical confrontation survives sufficiently for subsequent beverage consumption. Another reports witnessed supernatural transformation of bovine to caprine subject. Third claims aristocratic lineage through maternal extended relation. Every account commences with credibility. Disclaimer, simultaneously accurate and irrelevant. Factual skepticism remains subordinate to imaginative engagement. Exaggerations evolve into musical compositions. Misfortunes transform into mythological accounts. Humorist delivers content of such inferior quality it achieves paradoxical excellence. Poetic recitation occurs, presumably appropriated from monastic documentation. Assembled participants respond through percussive hand contact. Vocalized encouragement or comestible projectiles contingent upon performance qualitative or quantitative assessment. Optimal circumstances might include traveling professional, verbal disciplinarian, or musical specialist. Occupational entertainers traversing settlements, exchanging melodic delivery for monetary compensation, nutritional provision, and occasionally interior resting accommodation. Their compositions demonstrate refinement, extended duration, and potentially hazardous audience stimulation capability. Nevertheless, professional recognition of tavern narrative fundamental principle persists. Factual accuracy remains subordinate to narrative effectiveness. Then smoke-saturated environment, accompanied by combustion acoustics and beverage displacement. Narrative exchange transcends entertainment function, traditional practice, interpersonal connection, methodology for establishing positive relations, antagonistic engagement, occasional permanent consumption partnership. By midnight, substantial assembly portion reenacts unilaterally ambulatory combatant, repelling multiple roadside assailants, utilizing cooking implement. You experience amusement, encouragement, temporary suspension of fabrication awareness, because within medieval tavern context, every fabricator achieves legendary status through narrative excellence. As temporal progression continues and fermented beverage circulation persists, canospheric transformation, a cursing intoxicated audacity emerges. Musical performer midway through third composition addressing pastoral infidelity coincides with communal romantic inclination. Medieval courtship protocol initiates. Subtlety experiences complete evacuation. Initial engagement involves ocular contact, frequently limited to singular, partially functioning visual organ through fermented honey-induced perceptual imitation. Dental deficient male leans across horizontal seating, vocalizing impaired pronunciation. Noble female, your aesthetic qualities exceed thermal source illumination. Response involves baked goods, projectile targeting, facial region. Communal approval ensues. Alternative approaches demonstrate reduced aggression offering replenished vessels, awkwardly constructed complements, or nutritional transportation assistance with an inevitable, unsuccessful conclusion. Notifications. Spillage remains inevitable. Female tavern occupants visiting cage or commercial regularly experience defensive posturing against minimum 3 aspiring poets, jewel strength demonstrators, and singular individual attempting impression through precarious edged implement facial balancing. Occasional success occurs. Predominant outcomes include orbital discoloration or financial depletion. For companionship seekers, establishment provides services beyond preliminary interaction. Its professional companions navigate assembled patrons with practiced efficiency, identifying financial capacity, interpersonal magnetism, and unconsciousness probability prior to vertical transition. Transactions maintain discretion while implications achieve substantial visibility. Romantic jealousy, manifestation, formative. Confrontational catalyst efficiency, unmatched by misplaced visual attention. Unauthorized physical contact, or marital partner exhibiting excessive amusement, response to religious authority figure, comedic reference. Horizontal surfaces experience inversion. Beverage containers achieve weaponized status. Seating structural integrity compromised repeatedly. Amidst the tavern's tumult, tendrils of genuine connection take root. A shy baker's daughter exchanges shy glances with a dust-covered stonemason, the laughter mingling over steaming bowls of hearty stew. Across the room, 2 weather-beaten farmers discover kindred spirits in their shared disdain for turnips. Clinking mugs with newfound brotherhood. In a shadowed corner, a red-faced monk accidentally compliments a nun's eyes, both pretending the candlelight hides their blushes. Even in this cacophony of humanity, tender moments unfold like rare flowers. Medieval tavern romance thrives on equal measures of earnest charm, fortunate timing, and the crucial skill of remaining upright during conversation. Your heartfelt words might win affection or earn a stinging rebuke, but either outcome becomes tomorrow's tale. whispered through the village with embellishments aplenty. The inevitable clash arrives with the predictability of sunrise. Perhaps a wayward elbow upends a precious tankard. Maybe accusatory fingers point at suspiciously favorable dice. Its weary travelers might claim the same sliver of bench with equal conviction. Or perhaps someone's loose tongue wanders dangerously close to insulting another's mother, prized goat, or legendary soup recipe. The cause matters little when the consequence looms large. The tavern's atmosphere transforms in an eye-blink music and merriment, giving way to tense silence. Three-legged stool arcs through smoky air. A tankard shatters against the packed earth floor. A voice rings out, "Hold my bread," as its owner launches skyward with the awkward trajectory of a catapult stone, sailing over benches with more enthusiasm than grace. Remarkably, few patrons express surprise. Most continue nursing their drinks with practiced indifference. Medieval tavern brawls aren't unusual disruptions, they're expected entertainment. It's much a feature of the establishment as its hearth fire. Despite their fearsome reputation, these skirmishes rarely prove deadly. Instead, they unfold as chaotic theater. Combatants swing wildly with more vigor than aim, stumbling into tables and landing face first in strangers' suppers. Hair becomes handholds, beards transform into unfortunate levers, and garments tear along ancient seams. The tavern keeper bellows commands like a seasoned general, wielding the unlikely weapons of wooden ladle and gnarled club. Occasionally, bewildered patrons join the fray without understanding its origin. They merely glimpse movement and dive in, fists flailing in solidarity with unknown causes. Others maintain safe distance, placing impromptu wagers or carefully sliding precious ale beyond the splash zone. Actual weapons seldom appear. Even the rowdiest patrons understand the unwritten rule. Introducing steel transforms harmless chaos into permanent consequences. Nobody wishes banishment from the sole establishment, offering hot meals and warm drink through bitter winter nights. Eventually, exhaustion claims its tribute. Ultimate meets the floor with finality, choosing horizontal rest over continued struggle. Another stumbles backward into solid oak, sliding downward with newfound philosophical acceptance of their current circumstances. Like tavern candles guttering at evening's end, the conflict extinguishes suddenly, without ceremony or formal declaration. Perhaps most curious is the aftermath. Once concluded, the conflict truly ends. Former adversaries separate without lingering animosity. Fresh ale flows into dented mugs. Someone strikes up a familiar tune, and within mere moments, laughter again dominates the soundscape, even from the fellow dabbing blood from his nose with the sleeve corner. No enduring grudges, no promises of retribution, merely colorful bruises, embellished stories, and occasionally newly minted nicknames like One Night Arnold or Benchbreaker Bill. In medieval taverns, spirited combat represents merely another facet of communal entertainment. Messy, absurd, yet strangely bonding. Provided no one suffers grievous injury, it's simply another memorable chapter in the evening's diversions. With brawls concluded and the resident bard collapsed mid-verse, your belly full of mysterious stew and questionable cider, thoughts turn toward slumber. Temper expectations. Accordingly, this medieval establishment offers no down-filled mattresses or lavender-scented linens. This isn't a nobleman's chamber, but a tavern where comfort ranks far below practicality. Should accommodations exist, they await beyond creaking stairs, past slanted corridors where ceiling beams demand constant vigilance from taller patrons. Rooms prove small, perpetually cold, and invariably shared. Privacy exists solely in imagination as you settle shoulder to shoulder with complete strangers, some producing snores that could wake saints, others muttering dream conversations in unfamiliar tongues. The beds scarcely deserve the name straw-stuffed sacks flattened by countless previous occupants. Lumpy landscapes harboring generations of tiny residents, medievalists politely termed companions. Prudence demands sleeping fully clothed, boots firmly laced, with dagger tucked beneath your makeshift pillow knot for comfort but strategic necessity. Blankets, like everything else, come communally shared, along with their accumulated aromas. Should your neighbor have partaken of garlic with dinner, expect its essence to permeate your dreams with persistent pungency. For those lacking coins or sobriety sufficient for proper accommodation, the tavern's main room becomes dormitory. You claim territory beneath tables, atop benches, or beside the heart's dying embers, often curled against a mongrel dog of uncertain ownership but undeniable warmth. Such floor sleeping guarantees occasional trampling, probable exposure to others' bodily emissions, impossible transformation into furniture when stumbling patrons mistake your recumbent form for convenient footrests. True silence never descends upon medieval taverns. Even after final drinks drain and final punches land, ambient sounds persist. Sleep murmurings, fire crackling, and distant bodily functions echoing through ancient timbers. Yet somehow, slumber finds you. Comfort remains elusive, cleanliness merely theoretical, yet security proves sufficient. Glowing embers ward off night's deepest chill. The vigilant keeper maintains watchful semi-consciousness, club within easy reach. Surrounding sounds form peculiar, lullabies, familiar, human, alive with presence. Morning brings awakening to stiff neck, parched mouth, and mysteriously acquired bruising. Yet for precious hours, you've slumbered in strange community travelers and rogues, farmers and fools, sharing temporary sanctuary. No nobility, no silence, merely collective snoring, scattered straw, in fervent hopes your footwear remains where you left it, come daybreak. Dawn infiltrates the tavern like an unwelcome tax collector pail, light probing through shutter cracks, insistently prodding sleep-heavy eyelids with merciless determination. Overnight, the establishment has transformed not precisely quieter, but subdued in the manner of defeated armies. You cautiously open one eye to survey your predicament. Someone's mud-caked boot rests heavily upon your chest. Nearby, a stranger mumbles elaborate complaints regarding sheep taxation without actually waking. The previous night's enthusiastic musician slumbers beneath an overturned table, embracing his damaged instrument with lover's devotion. A speckled hen struts purposefully across floorboards, methodically investigating scattered bread fragments. No patron questions its presence or ownership. The once roaring hearth has diminished to sullen embers, leaving the chamber both frigid and smoke-hazed. Early risers begin stirring reluctantly, producing groans, suggesting internal battles waged exclusively within skull confines. One bearded fellow achieves momentary verticality, surveys his surroundings with profound disappointment, then deliberately returns to horizontal repose, having concluded consciousness offers insufficient rewards. Meanwhile, the indefatigable tavern keeper, seemingly immune to mortal requirements for rest, already bustles about, rearranging tankards, redistributing straw into fresh configurations, and tending a bubbling pot emanating aromas simultaneously enticing and vaguely threatening. Surveying the human wreckage littering the floor, they strike ladle against metal with percussive authority that would shame cathedral bells. Their message requires no translation. Up or out, your medieval alarm clock has sounded. Morning brings no royal breakfast, just more pottage, somehow thicker than last night's offering, defying the laws of culinary physics. The bread reappears, suspiciously rewarmed, while the ale has mysteriously thinned overnight, though no patron summons the courage to protest. Outside, more practical souls perform ablutions by simply plunging their heads into a rainwater barrel, merging, dripping, and declaring themselves sufficiently cleansed. You discreetly inventory your possessions. 2 precious coins and a button remain in your pouch, veritable fortune by dawn standards. Your boots have survived the night as well, though one bears an inexplicable bite mark. Still, they're yours, a victory worth celebrating in this precarious world. The tavern's doors creak open to admit fresh faces, early travelers with road dust still clinging to their cloaks. Laborers fortifying themselves before confronting livestock tax collectors, or that most formidable adversary, neighbors. Like a slumbering beast, slowly regaining consciousness, the establishment stirs to life once more. In the corner, someone recounts last night's escapades, the tale already transformed by memory's creative license. Now, there were two brawls, not one. In the minstrel's song, allegedly summoned a spectral visitor. The assembled audience nods with solemn conviction, accepting this embellished gospel without question. While the previous night offered chaos, this morning delivers grogginess, grime, and abundant regret. Yet somehow, a smile finds your lips, born from the simple triumph of survival. By now, your senses have absorbed the full medieval tavern, experienced the perspiration-heavy air, wood smoke clinging to your garments, sticky ale residue beneath your footsteps. You've weathered shouting matches, awkward courtship rituals, suspicious stew, and possibly airborne furniture. Through this sensory onslaught emerges an essential truth. The medieval tavern transcended its humble function as mere drinking establishment. It served as the community's vital organ, pumping information through society's veins. In an era bereft of telephones, printed news, or digital networks, the tavern functioned as information's crossroads. Coastal merchants brought foreign port gossip. Battle-weary soldiers recounted frontline horrors. And wandering bards wove songs that stitched communities together, even as lyrics morphed with each performance. This wooden beam sanctuary fostered connections impossible elsewhere. Soil-stained farmers shared benches with skilled craftsmen, road-worn pilgrims broke bread alongside light-fingered thieves. Strangers transformed into companions before their second drink arrived. Within these walls, rigid social hierarchies momentarily dissolved. Rumors sparked and spread like wildfire. Alliances formed over handshakes, and ancient grudges either found a peaceful resolution or blazed with renewed intensity, often determined by nothing more consequential than how the dice tumbled across rough-hewn tables. The tavern doubled as medieval marketplace, courthouse, and theater. Deals sealed over spilled cider became binding contracts, witnessed by bleary-eyed patrons. Impromptu tribunals resolved disputes before dawn's arrival. Confessions spilled from lips loosened by fermented courage. A single evening might bring employment opportunity, emptied purses, hasty matrimony, or blood feuds spanning generations. Beyond these practical functions, tavern offered something precious beyond measure, temporary respite from medieval existence's relentless harshness. For fleeting hours, patrons could huddle near crackling flames, exchange crude humor, join discordant songs, and briefly forget the punishing world waiting beyond weathered doors. Though the ale arrived lukewarm, the bedding harbored uninvited guests, and the soup contained more mystery than nourishment. The tavern bestowed something invaluable, the sensation of being alive among fellow survivors. In an age where disease, warfare, or winter's bite claimed lives without warning or ceremony, such communion represented profound treasure. Entering a medieval tavern meant purchasing more than mere sustenance. You acquired belonging, narrative, and perhaps, if fortune smiled upon you, a sleeping space near enough to dying embers to ward off night's deepest chill. Long before contemporary gathering places emerged, there stood the tavern, boisterous, unsanitary, authentic, and utterly unforgettable in its humble glory, before becoming Egypt's most recognizable face immortalized in limestone with those unmistakable high cheekbones and a gaze of serene determination. Nefertiti existed as a figure shrouded in tantalizing mystery. Her name itself reveals her essence. The beautiful one has come. Yet her origins remain contested among scholars. Some evidence suggests royal bloodlines through the powerful official eye, perhaps making her Akhenaten's sister by birth. Competing theories propose foreign princess status, sent to Egypt through diplomatic marriage alliance. While her beginnings remain obscured by time's veil, her monumental influence stands unquestioned in historical record. Nefertiti emerges in Egypt's historical narrative with electrifying suddenness, brilliant flash illuminating ancient scrolls and stone carvings. She appears not as Akhenaten's subordinate consort, but as his equal partner in Egypt's most radical religious revolution. Together, they orchestrated the unthinkable, dismantling centuries of polytheistic tradition, banishing the pantheon of beloved deities, and elevating the sun discontent to supreme divine status. This theological earthquake represented heresy of the highest order. More remarkably, Nefertiti participated actively rather than symbolically leading sacred ceremonies, presenting offerings directly to Aten, and even appearing in royal arts smiting Egypt's enemies, not a iconographic role traditionally reserved exclusively for pharaohs themselves. Unlike her royal predecessors, relegated to decorative roles, Nefertiti maintained omnipresence in Egypt's visual record. She appears in more surviving artwork than even Akhenaten himself, statistical anomaly revealing her exceptional status. These artistic depictions reject conventional feminine submission. Instead, they portray her with commanding stature, sometimes physically larger than surrounding figures, wielding royal regalia with undeniable authority. Within Egypt's divine monarchy, where pharaohs embodied gods incarnate, Nefertiti's unprecedented proximity to Akhenaten's spiritually, politically, and artistically suggests something revolutionary. Perhaps her role transcended queenship entirely. Perhaps she ruled as genuine co-regent of the two lands. This meteoric ascent generated inevitable resistance. Egypt's populace, steeped in traditional worship patterns spanning millennia, struggled with such profound religious disruption. The displaced priesthood of Ammon, once holders of immense wealth and influence, seethed with resentment as their temples closed and offerings ceased. When the royal couple relocated Egypt's capital to purpose-built Akhenaten, severing physical ties with traditional religious centers, tensions escalated further. Throughout this tumultuous period, Nefertiti remained visibly central, her image carved into temple walls, her name invoked in solar hymns, her presence essential to the new theology. Yet, despite this extraordinary visibility during life, her death presents history's most perplexing disappearing act. No confirmed tomb, no recovered remains, no recorded passing, only profound silence. It seems history, after faithfully documenting her radiance, abruptly averted its gaze. This conspicuous absence forms the foundation of her enduring legend. To understand Nefertiti's ascension, you must first encounter the revolutionary who transformed Egypt. Pharaoh Akhenaten was born as Amenhotep IV. He inherited the mantle of a 1,000-year dynasty steeped in polytheistic tradition. Yet something profound awakened within him, a vision that some scholars attribute to divine revelation, others to political calculation, or perhaps mental instability. Whatever sparked this transformation, its consequences were seismic. Upon claiming the throne, he committed the unthinkable. He turned against Amen, Egypt's supreme deity, and proclaimed a singular truth: only the sun disk, the Aten, deserved worship. This wasn't merely a theological adjustment, but a cultural cataclysm that fractured Egyptian society's very foundation. Imagine a civilization whose entire existence revolved around sacred temples, elaborate rituals, and generations of priestly authority suddenly being informed their cosmic understanding was fundamentally flawed. Akhenaten didn't simply advocate monotheism. He implemented it with unyielding determination. Amon's temples were sealed, his name violently chiseled from monuments, his statues systematically destroyed. Entire settlements, once vibrant with religious activity, fell silent and abandoned. In their place rose Akhenaten, horizon of the Aten, a magnificent city purpose-built for the new religion, designed with mathematical precision. Its main boulevard and royal palace aligned perfectly so that the rising sun would emerge between eastern cliffs, bathing the city in what Akhenaten deemed sacred illumination. Throughout this religious upheaval, Nefertiti stood not as a passive queen, but as an equal spiritual authority. Contemporary reliefs depict her offering sacrifices to Aten with identical ceremonial importance as the pharaoh himself. The royal couple and their daughters appear together in intimate scenes, faces upturned toward the sun's radiating beams, a revolutionary artistic representation of divine royal communion. The artistic conventions themselves underwent radical transformation. Gone were the rigid, idealized forms of traditional Egyptian portraiture. In their place emerged a fluid, naturalistic, sometimes exaggerated style. Intimate scenes, previously unimaginable in royal art, now adorned palace walls, the royal couple exchanging tender kisses, playing with their children, offering prayers in flowing garments beneath the sun's benevolent rays. Nefertiti's presence permeated this new reality, occasionally eclipsing even Akhenaten's prominence. Compelling evidence suggests she wielded substantial political authority, possibly serving as co-regent. Inscriptions referring to her as Neferneferuiten, beauty of the beauties of Aten, may indicate her transition to independent rulership. Whether Akhenaten shared power through genuine partnership, strategic necessity, or political calculation remains debated. But one certainty emerges. Without Nefertiti's commanding presence, this religious revolution would likely have collapsed far sooner. Yet, revolutions inevitably generate resistance. The displaced gods and their mortal representatives awaited vindication. The populace, their ancestral beliefs outlawed, observed silently, anticipating the old order's restoration. During this tumultuous period, Nefertiti transcended conventional queenship to become something unprecedented embodiment of divine feminine authority and sovereign power. Egypt had known formidable queens before Mos Nefertari, who helped expel foreign invaders, Hatshepsut, who ruled as pharaoh, but Nefertiti's position remained distinctive. She didn't seize power through military conquest or dynastic maneuvering. Instead, she methodically rewove Egypt's spiritual and cultural fabric alongside her husband, manifesting as a living goddess within her lifetime. She bore Akhenaten 6 daughters, Meritaten, Meketaten, and 3 others, all prominently featured in family scenes beneath Aten's radiant beams. The conspicuous absence of sons remains one of history's intriguing footnotes. As political tremors intensified throughout the kingdom, some evidence suggests Nefertiti achieved pharaonic status in her own right, an extraordinary elevation placing her among the rarest category in Egyptian history: female kings. Yet, even this momentous achievement dissolves into historical ambiguity. The reign of Neferneferuaten concludes abruptly, followed immediately by the emergence of Tutankhaten, a child king who would systematically dismantle his predecessor's religious innovations and restore traditional worship. If Nefertiti indeed ruled independently, her reign proved brief. If she assumed the identity of the mysterious Smenkhare or ruled as Neferneferuten, she governed as an ephemeral sovereign, visible only through fragmented cartouches and damaged artifacts, a historical enigma with its central piece missing. Thus, the woman who dominated Egypt's most radical era vanishes from recorded history with the same suddenness that marked her arrival. Her narrative, however, continued evolving. As Amarna's revolutionary dust settled, a new figure emerged, a boy king scarcely old enough to wield the royal crook and flail. Originally named Tutankhaten, a living image of Aten, he soon became Tutankhamun, living image of Amun, signaling the restoration of traditional religion. His historical significance stems not from his accomplishments during life, but from the unparalleled treasures discovered in his undisturbed tomb. Yet, a crucial question persists. Who was his mother? Historical records maintained frustrating silence. While evidence strongly suggests Akhenaten as his father, his maternal lineage remains shrouded in uncertainty. Some scholars propose Nefertiti as his stepmother. Others present compelling arguments for her biological motherhood, citing artistic evidence suggesting his childhood coincided with her final documented appearances. If Nefertiti indeed bore Tutankhamun, subsequent events acquire logical coherence. His early reign exhibits evidence of sophisticated guidance. The systematic dismantling of his father's religious innovations seems unlikely to have originated from a child's mind. This introduces the most tantalizing historical mystery: who orchestrated Egypt's course during Tutankhamun's vulnerable reign. At approximately 9 years old, when ascending the throne, a child could hardly navigate the complexities of restoring an ancient religious system. Someone operated behind the scenes, someone versed in court politics, religious authority, and symbolic communication. Could Nefertiti have continued wielding power from the shadows? Might the high priest, possibly her father, have seized control? Or perhaps both collaborated to erase Amarna's disruptive legacy and restore Egypt's theological equilibrium. The golden shrine in Tutankhamun's tomb offers perhaps the most tantalizing clue in Nefertiti's mysterious disappearance. Upon its gilded surface, a woman bearing striking resemblance to the iconic Quininoids, the young pharaoh. This single image transforms our understanding completely. Perhaps Nefertiti never vanished at all, but merely stepped behind the throne, wielding influence from the shadows. Without ceremonial burial or identified remains, historians piece together her final years like a fragmented mosaic. She did indeed guide Tutankhamun's reign. Her influence permeates every royal decree and restoration. Yet her name has been methodically erased, chiseled from temple walls, and omitted from king lists, as though powerful forces conspired to obliterate the memory of a woman who commanded godlike authority. The supreme irony: Tutankhamun's discovery would ultimately resurrect her legacy. In seeking the boy king's story, archaeologists stumbled upon hers. For a woman who stood at the epicenter of Egypt's most revolutionary era, simultaneously queen, high priestess, and possible pharaoh, Nefertiti left an inexplicable void in death. Not a single monument commemorates her passing. No sarcophagus cradles her remains. No funerary mask preserves her features. No hieroglyphic inscription carries her final prayers to the afterlife. She simply evaporated from historical record. This profound absence has confounded Egyptologists for generations. In a civilization utterly consumed with death rituals, where even modest officials were carefully mummified and entombed with elaborate funerary texts. How could one of Egypt's most significant royal women leave no trace? The theories multiply with each passing decade. One compelling possibility suggests a hasty, unceremonious burial during Amarna's chaotic final days. Her association with religious heresy may have rendered her dangerous to Egypt's resurgent Orthodox priests. Her tomb, if it existed, might have been systematically dismantled. Her cartouches defaced, her memory deliberately extinguished amid the frenzied restoration of traditional worship. After all, the vengeance against Akhenaten's legacy was swift and thorough, carved into stone with methodical precision. Alternatively, and far more intriguing, her tomb may have eluded discovery simply because archaeologists have been searching in the wrong place. Some researchers propose the unthinkable, that Nefertiti lies within the Valley of the Kings itself, perhaps concealed behind the very walls of Tutankhamun's burial chamber. In 2015, the archaeological world held its collective breath when radar scans of KV62, the famous tomb of Tutankhamun, revealed anomalies suggesting hidden chambers. Could Nefertiti be resting mere inches away, separated only by a thin wall from the greatest archaeological discovery of the 20th century? The possibility electrified scholars and the public alike. A queen waiting silently beyond reach, her secrets intact after 3 millennia. Yet subsequent investigations proved inconclusive. As funding waned and technical challenges mounted, Nefertiti retreated once more into the realm of myth. Still, her absence resonates more powerfully than most presences. Her likeness survives in dozens of sculptures and reliefs, her features immortalized in stone and pigment. Her legendary bust in Berlin's News Museum gazes across the centuries with enigmatic calm, still harboring ancient secrets, patient for eternity. Each archaeological season brings renewed hope across the sands of Amarna and the Valley of the Kings. Each year, whispers circulate through academic circles. Might this excavation finally reveal her hidden chamber? Could an overlooked cartouche finally speak her true name? Or is Nefertiti destined to remain history's most elegant enigma, her story perpetually unfinished? If Egypt's priests and subsequent pharaohs sought to bury her memory, they achieved only temporary success. The search for Nefertiti transcends mere archaeological curiosity, has become an obsession spanning centuries. But if her tomb and body remain elusive, why does her name still echo through time? The answer rests in a climate-controlled display in Berlin, a painted limestone bust that has captivated humanity since its 1912 rediscovery. The bust of Nefertiti stands as antiquity's most recognizable portrait. She gazes forward with a transcendent poise, her elongated neck suggesting divine grace, her distinctive blue crown symbolizing royal authority, her features so exquisitely rendered they appear almost contemporary. One eye remains unfinished, perhaps deliberately left incomplete by the sculptor, or simply abandoned when the royal workshop closed. Yet this small imperfection only enhances her mystery. Even incomplete, she embodies timeless perfection. German archaeologist Ludwig Burchard unearthed this masterpiece while excavating the workshop of royal sculptor Athamos at Amarna. When his brush revealed her face from beneath millennia of dust, he recognized immediately the magnitude of his discovery. In his field journal, he wrote simply, "No use describing it. You have to see it." Once revealed to the world, Nefertiti transcended historical categorization to become a universal symbol of beauty, power, and enigma. Yet, even her bust remains entangled in controversy. Egypt has repeatedly demanded its repatriation, requiring that Germany acquired the artifact during an era of questionable antiquities practices. To Egyptians, she belongs beneath the same sun that once illuminated her kingdom. Germany has consistently refused, citing conservation concerns and the sculpture's fragility. Skeptics suggest less noble motivations. Nefertiti attracts countless visitors annually. She has become, in essence, Germany's Mona Lisa. Beyond museum politics, her serene visage has transformed modern perceptions of ancient women. This is no passive beauty captured in stone. Her countenance radiates authority, intelligence, and commanding presence. She appears as someone who held court with kings, shaped imperial policy, and altered religious doctrine. The quiet power of this single sculpture has accomplished something remarkably, has resurrected a woman whom history attempted to erase, though her tomb remains undiscovered and her death unrecorded. Through this bust, Nefertiti achieved genuine immortality, not through gold and ritual, but through human memory and imagination. The limestone may be cold, but the narrative it inspires burns with increasing intensity across the centuries. Nefertiti exists in that liminal space between historical fact and cultural mythology, between verifiable evidence and passionate speculation. Few historical figures have inspired such persistent fascination, coupled with such profound mystery. She embodies paradox simultaneously, one of ancient Egypt's most visually documented women, yet remaining fundamentally unknowable. Through successive generations, she has been reimagined according to the preoccupations of each era. Some envision her as divine beauty incarnate, others as calculated political strategist, still others as the romantic heroine of a doomed religious revolution. More recent interpretations paint her as brilliantly pragmatic, navigating imperial collapse with unparalleled sophistication. What can we state with certainty? She transcended conventional queenship. Her iconography rivals that of kings themselves. Her presence in religious ceremonies, diplomatic functions, and even martial imagery reveals a woman who didn't merely stand adjacent to power, but actively wielded it. in an overwhelmingly patriarchal society. She carved unprecedented authority, not through overt rebellion, but through calculated presence. Through ceremonial performance, through absolute command of Egypt's visual and theological language, she proved instrumental to one of history's most audacious religious transformations. While Akhenaten may have conceived the theological framework for Aten worship, Nefertiti embodied its living expression. She functioned as the human manifestation of divine feminine principle, the central bridge connecting celestial Aten to terrestrial worship. She didn't merely serve divine forces, she personified them. After vanishing from the record, Nefertiti suffered history's harshest erasure. The vengeful priests who restored traditional religion didn't merely forget her, they systematically obliterated her existence. Her exquisite statues were hammered to fragments. Her royal cartouches were violently chiseled away. Her contributions to Egypt's golden age were deliberately buried beneath sand and silence. And yet, remarkably, here we stand 3 millennia later, her name still dancing on our tongues. How did she transcend such thorough destruction? Because myths possess a resilience that mere facts cannot match. When a woman transforms into both icon and enigma, she escapes time's grasp entirely. In Nefertiti's case, the questions surrounding her fate resonate more powerfully than any concrete answers ever could. Perhaps this was her masterstroke to be eternally remembered rather than explained, to be forever admired rather than contained, to achieve immortality not through a single tomb, but through endless fascination and speculation. More than 30 centuries have elapsed since Nefertiti last breathed Egypt's desert air. Yet her presence looms larger now than ever, captured in museum displays, debated in academic circles, reimagined through literature and film. Unlike most historical figures who diminish with passing centuries, Nefertiti grows more significant with each generation. Her allure transcends mere physical beauty. What truly captivates us is her perfect mystery. The calculated gaps in her story feel almost intentional, as if she deliberately left us breadcrumbs without a destination, knowing we would forever chase her shadow. Through this elusive quality, she's evolved beyond historical figure into something archetypal. Each era reconstructs Nefertiti according to its own ideals and preoccupations. Victorian scholars painted her as exotic and submissive. Feminist historians reclaimed her as a symbol of female power, systematically erased by patriarchy. Contemporary culture celebrates her variously as fashioned icon, African queen, political strategist, and potential pharaoh. She has lived countless posthumous lives, not through historical certainty, but through our collective imagination. Perhaps this constitutes the most perfect afterlife imaginable. In ancient Egyptian belief, true immortality wasn't achieved through mummification alone. The essence of eternal life resided in memory. If your name continued to be spoken, your image beheld, your story recounted to, truly lived on. The deceased could navigate the celestial field of reeds, commune with deities, and transcend death's finality only if remembered by the living. By this measure, Nefertiti has achieved an immortality beyond even Pharaoh's dreams. Her name echoes across continents in countless languages. Her face ranks among humanity's most instantly recognizable images. Her fragmented narratives still commands scholarly attention and public fascination. Viewed through this lens, her greatest achievement wasn't preserved in monument or sarcophagus, it lives in our unquenchable curiosity. She bequeathed to posterity the perfect enigma, a life half illuminated, half obscured, wholly unforgettable. Perhaps this represents her ultimate demonstration of power. Nefertiti, the beautiful one who has come, never truly departed. She endures in our questions, our wonder, and our determination to remember women whom history attempted to forget. Her immortality resides not in gold or grandeur, but in humanity's eternal quest to find her. And what greater immortality exists than being perpetually sought after 3,000 years of silence. In China's mist-shrouded mountains, where clouds hang low and wind whispers through ancient bamboo, a slumbering dragon stretches across the landscape. Not a creature of myth or legend, but a marvel of human ingenuity, the Longji rice terraces. Known locally as the dragon's backbone, these terraced fields undulate across mountainsides like glistening scales, their contours capturing water, sunlight, and generations of unspoken wisdom. From afar, these terraces create the perfect illusion of a resting beast. Each precisely carved level ripples outward, rising and falling like the sinews of a living creature. Yet approach closer, and you'll discover something even more alive than metaphor. Crystal clear. Water trickles through meticulously engineered channels. Emerald seedlings dance in mountain breezes. At daybreak, diaphanous mist cloaks the landscape like breath exhaled from the dragon's nostrils, transforming agriculture into living poetry. These magnificent terraces emerge not from hasty ambition, but patient necessity. Their story began over 7 centuries ago, when the Zhuang and Yao peoples' ethnic minorities, with ancestral connections to these mountains, confronted an existential challenge. Faced with rugged terrain, inhospitable to traditional farming, they refused to abandon their homeland. Its flat, arable land was precious and scarce. Modern machinery lay centuries in the future, standing before imposing slopes. These ingenious farmers posed a deceptively simple question: how might we cultivate sustenance from this vertical world? The answer would unfold across generations, carved one terrace at a time. Armed with nothing more than rudimentary stone tools and woven bamboo baskets, these ingenious farmers sculpted the mountainsides painstakingly, inch by inch, year by year, generation by generation. With each terrace they completed, they didn't merely reshape the terrain. They established a profound dialogue with the land itself, teaching it to breathe in rhythm with human needs. What was once runoff became precious resource. Steep slopes transformed into fertile fields. Rice, that life-sustaining grain, flourished where gravity once claimed dominion. And gradually, mysteriously, the terraces took on the sinuous form of a slumbering dragon, powerful, timeless, divine. This transcended mere agriculture, embodied perfect harmony, a sacred covenant between humanity and wilderness. Every contour of the mountain was honored, nothing wasted or forcibly subdued. Instead, these people collaborated with the earth, following its natural undulations, heeding the whispers of wind, observing the paths of water. Today, this dragon's backbone continues to nourish entire communities, yet its significance extends beyond sustenance, stands as a monument to what patient dedication can accomplish. In our frantically accelerating world, here lies a dragon, never pursued, only lovingly sculpted, tier by tier, vision by vision. To wander among the Longji rice terraces is to enter a realm shaped by unwavering perseverance. This is no illusion or artifice. No mechanical tracks scar these hillsides, no corporate markers, stake claims. What unfolds across these mountains are the intimate fingerprints of human determination. Every graceful curve, every angled slope, every channeled droplet has been arranged stone by careful stone, by hands intimately attuned to the mountain's pulse. When the Zhuang and Yao peoples first gazed upon these steep, forbidding slopes centuries ago, they perceived not insurmountable barriers, but untapped potential. The fertile valleys below were already claimed and cultivated. But here, amidst these towering peaks, they glimpsed possibility. Only they could coax the earth to listen. Without modern machinery, they commenced their monumental task. With wooden shovels, primitive stone hoes, and countless baskets of soil and rubble carried on backs, weathered by time. Gradually, terraces emerged like horizontal veins traversing the mountainside, each supported by meticulously hand-stacked stone walls. These weren't random incisions into the slope, but calculated interventions. Each level required perfect balance, not only to retain water, but to guide it systematically from one tier to the next without waste. One miscalculation risked catastrophic collapse. Too steep an angle would cause destructive rushing water. Too shallow would create stagnant pools. They measured, not with scientific instruments, but with ancestral intuition accumulated across generations. Children absorbed knowledge from elders. Elders observed seasonal patterns, and eventually the mountain yielded not in defeat, but in partnership. The result, a landscape that doesn't define nature, but flows with it. From valley floor to mist-shrouded summit, these terraces ascend like a celestial staircase. They echo the mountain's natural contours with such elegance that they appear almost organically grown. Yet, these weren't nature's creation. They were human achievement, without engines, without concrete, without architectural training, just persistence, experimentation, and the profound belief that even the steepest terrain could sustain life. Today, these terraces remain fully functional, still cultivated, maintained, and deeply respected. No modern bulldozers, no technological shortcuts. These ancient methods endure not from stubborn resistance to progress, but because they've proven something extraordinary. Traditions, when deeply rooted, can withstand the fiercest storms of change. If the dragon's backbone represents muscle and bone, then water serves as its lifeblood. It circulates silently, without mechanical pumps or engines, following ancient channels that cascade from mountain springs to every terrace below. This hydraulic symphony isn't accidental, but the very essence of the terraces, the secret to their centuries of productivity. At the mountain's crown, rainfall and natural springs are captured in narrow trenches and earthen conduits. From there, gravity becomes the farmer's faithful ally. Water descends through successive terraces, collecting briefly in each field before flowing to the next. This ingenious design ensures every rice paddy receives precisely what it needs. No surplus, no shortage. There are no modern valves or switches. Control comes through simple gates, crafted from stone or wood, adjusted by practiced hands and inherited wisdom. If one terrace receives too much water, it risks flooding those below. If one develops, leaks, drought threatens. Consequently, villagers guardians of this delicate ecosystem patrol the ridges daily, inspecting, adjusting, listening attentively to the subtle music of flowing water. This isn't merely farming, it's orchestrating a symphony. One misplaced note disrupts the entire composition, but the water serves beyond mere sustenance. It transforms into nature's own mirror, reflecting the heavens above. During spring's first flooding, the paddies metamorphose into liquid glass. Each terrace becomes a perfect mirror, capturing clouds, sunlight, and on clear nights, constellations that seem to float beneath your feet. Visitors stand mesmerized at this optical illusion of mountain, wearing the sky like a cloak. As summer advances, this crystalline clarity yields to vibrant life. Emerging rice stalks puncture the surface, turning reflections into undulating waves of emerald that dance with every mountain breeze. Autumn brings another transformation as golden grain shimmers through water grown shallow and warm. When winter descends, the cycle completes. Farming pauses as frost etches delicate patterns where water once flowed. The dragon's veins lie dormant but intact, silent channels awaiting spring's awakening touch. Time itself follows different rhythms here, not the mechanical tick of clocks, but the organic pulse of moisture. Calendar turns, not with dates, but with the first silver trickle of mountain thaw. The throaty chorus of returning frogs, the earthy perfume of soil awakening from winter's sleep. While the world beyond these mountains fragments time into ever smaller digital units, longest inhabitants measure it in seasons and droplets patient, circular, eternally returning. Here, the dragon's essence manifests not through mythical fire and flight, but through water's gentle persistence, coursing through this living sculpture of stone and earth. Spring's arrival in Longji announces itself not with blossoms, but with waters returned. As winter retreats and snow surrenders to warmth, crystalline streams cascade downward, breathing renewed life into terraces that have waited patiently through winter's dormancy. The perfectly level patties, now shimmering with fresh water, stand ready. The mountain dragon stirs from slumber, and villagers prepare for the ancient ceremony that connects them to countless ancestors, the planting of the first seed. There are no grand proclamations, no formal ceremonies, only purposeful movement. Farmers of all generations rise with the dawn mist, traversing narrow pathways barefoot, wide-brimmed straw hats shielding their eyes from morning sun, woven baskets balanced expertly across shoulders. The atmosphere hangs heavy with the intoxicating blend of water-soaked earth and crisp mountain air. Recently flooded fields glisten like slabs of polished jade beneath the morning light. This crucial task defies mechanization. It always has. Caged delicate rice seedling, tenderly cultivated in protected nursery beds, must be transplanted individually by hand, creating perfect lines that will maximize yield and honor tradition. Workers wade into cool water, pressing tender shoots into soft mud with practiced fingers that know exactly how deep to plant, how far to space. The rhythm becomes almost hypnotic. Back bent, arm extended, fingers press, step sideways, repeat, continuing from sunrise until sunset, sometimes for weeks until completion. Children splash nearby, not merely playing, but apprenticing, mimicking their elders' movements. Knowledge transfers, not through books or lessons, but through immersion, feeling mud's resistance between toes. Learning proper spacing through observation, absorbing wisdom through participation. Tease, this is education in its most primal form. Knowledge, lived rather than spoken. Planting transcends mere agricultural necessity to become sacred ritual. Before work begins, offerings honor mountain spirits who safeguard the waters. Songs passed through generations float across terraces, their melodies unchanged for centuries. In certain villages, the most respected elders ceremonially scatter the first handful of seedlings as blessing and invocation. Each field planted represents more than future sustenance, embodies a solemn promise to the land. Two ancestors watching from beyond, two children not yet born. No one rushes this process. No one tries to race against natural rhythms. Instead, planting becomes meditation, a choreographed dance between human intention and natural cycles, patience intertwined with purpose. Days pass, and gradually, tender green shoots emerge from watery cradles, like whispered promises of abundance to come. From this moment forward, the terraces nurture more than mere crops. They cultivate hope itself. Each seedling represents not just potential nourishment, but continuity, resilience, and faith in tomorrow. Every carefully aligned row stands as quiet defiance against scarcity and haste. The ancient cycle begins anew, not with fanfare or spectacle, but with quiet dignity, mud-covered hands, and skyward-looking hearts. The mountain dragon awakens fully now. The landscape itself seems to inhale and exhale with life as future harvests take root, one careful seedling at a time. Crowning the ridgelines and nestled within the terrace folds lie the true heartbeats of this living landscape. Villages with names like Ping'an, Daizai, and Jinkang. These settlements transcend mere habitation. They stand as living archives of cultural heritage, where every dwelling, pathway, and balcony clings to steep slopes like memories, refusing to surrender to time. Homes constructed from hand-hewn timber rest on ingenious stilts, protecting against seasonal rains and accommodating the mountain's dramatic incline. Their distinctive rooflines, steep and darkened by weather, echo the terraces they overlook, creating visual harmony between human shelter and agricultural innovation. Viewed from distant ridges, these villages appear as wooden lanterns suspended above undulating waves of emerald cultivation. Within these homes, life unfolds with elegant simplicity, profound warmth, and deeply embedded communality. Multiple generations share living space, wisdom flowing naturally from elders to youth. Meals simmer over carefully tended wood fires, their aromas mingling with mountain air. The distinctive scents of rice wine fermentation and bamboo smoke create an olfactory signature unique to these heights. The inhabitants belong primarily to the Zhuang and Red Yao minorities, each preserving distinct languages, traditions, and mythologies, despite centuries of outside influence. Yao women remain instantly recognizable by their extraordinary haircut, since childhood coiled into elaborate arrangements atop their heads. During ceremonial river bathing, some unwind these tresses, releasing cascades of midnight black hair that flow like liquid silk to their ankles. The spectacle of such ethereal grace, it blurs the boundary between reality and legend. Despite modernity's gradual encroachment up mountain paths, traditions maintain remarkable resilience. Indigo-dyed garments emerge from handlooms that creak rhythmically in quiet corners. Ancient melodies, played on reed pipes and bronze drums, still accompany village celebrations. Wedding ceremonies preserve ritualized dances, unchanged for generations. Harvest festivals continue to welcome abundance with songs whose origins predate written records. Hospitality here exists not as commercial transaction, but as cultural reflex. Visitors receive tea brewed from locally harvested leaves, rice, wine served in hand-carved gourds, and narratives shared by village elders who remembered the mountain's character before electricity's arrival transformed evening rituals. Their stories speak of mist-dwelling dragons, of ancestors who first envisioned terraces in dreams, of protective spirits who still patrol fields during moonless nights. While tourism now brings cameras and questions from across the globe, the fundamental rhythm of village life continues largely uninterrupted. Rice still grows according to ancient patterns. Seasonal rituals still mark time's passage. The terraces, like their caretakers, endure not through rigid resistance, but through thoughtful adaptation, absorbing change gradually, like water moving deliberately from one level to the next. Within these dragon-shaped mountains, existence unfolds not with urgency, but with deliberate flow. It resonates with ancestral echoes. It remembers what modern life too often forgets. To walk the terraces of Longji is to traverse a living tapestry of mythology. These hills aren't merely earth and rock. They pulse with ancient narratives that whisper through swaying bamboo and dance on mountain winds. For the villagers, these peaks represent far more than geography. They are divine entities sculpted by celestial hands, washed over by vigilant spirits, and inhabited by tales that flow like water from one generation to the next. The most captivating legend tells of a slumbering dragon whose immense body stretches languidly across the ridgelines. Its spine arches in elegant coils, the very terraces themselves. Village elders insist that the undulating curves of the mountainside aren't human creations, but rather the dragon's scales that subtly rise and fall with each ethereal breath. When dawn mist spills into the valley, enveloping the paddies in luminous white, locals say the dragon stirs in its ancient sleep, its breath materializing before their eyes. Another cherished tale recounts the divine birth of these terraces. During a devastating famine, desperate ancestors climbed the unforgiving slopes to beseech the heavens. Moved by their unwavering devotion, the gods unleashed life-giving rain and commanded them to carve the mountainsides into steps where rice could flourish. The people obeyed without question, and the benevolent dragon appeared to guide their hands through the monumental task. Since that pivotal moment, villagers have honored the mountain with profound reverence, never raising voices in the fields, never felling trees without ceremonial prayers of gratitude. These sacred beliefs aren't preserved in dusty manuscripts or scholarly texts. They thrive in melodic songs that accompany planting rituals and fragrant incense burned before each growing season begins in a reverential silence maintained during misty dawnings. Children absorb these narratives not as fanciful myths, but as fundamental truths embedded in the landscape itself. To mock the dragon is to invite agricultural disaster. To disrespect the spirits is to court catastrophic floods or merciless drought. Water spirits, too, command profound respect. Many farmers still perform solemn offerings before releasing the first spring waters into the terraces. Each year a few precious drops of handcrafted rice wine, prayers murmured on grateful breath. These aren't theatrical displays for tourists, but instinctive traditions as natural as breathing. And regardless of your beliefs about dragons, something undeniably sacred permeates the atmosphere. Perhaps it's the profound silence, or the ever-shifting clouds embracing the peaks. Or perhaps it's the quiet certainty that this extraordinary place transcends mere human effort. It's an ongoing narrative inscribed not with ink, but with stone, water, and golden grain. For centuries, the dragon's backbone remained a secret, jealously guarded by the mountains remote, serene, known only to those who called it home. Yet no sanctuary, however sacred, remains forever untouched by time's relentless march. Roads carved through forests, electrical wires stretched across valleys. Tourists with cameras and smartphones now climb alongside farmers with weathered hands, and these ancient terraces face an unprecedented question. How does one preserve one's soul in a rapidly modernizing world? Initial anxiety was palpable. Some feared the mountain would be dismantled and sold to developers piece by precious piece, that concrete would supplant timber, that authentic culture would evolve into mere costume for visitors' entertainment. But the resilient people of Longyi didn't merely endure this transformation, they orchestrated it with remarkable wisdom. Rather than abandoning their heritage, they wove contemporary realities into traditional patterns, one careful thread at a time. Villagers opened their ancestral homes, not as commercial resorts, but as authentic family homestays. Visitors partake in genuine local cuisine: sticky rice, steamed in bamboo tubes, wild mountain greens, harvested at daybreak. They sleep in traditional wooden houses, elevated on stilts, where roosters still herald each sunrise. The experience isn't artificially curated. It's authentically lived, honestly shared, genuinely real. And the farming, the essential soul of this place, continues uninterrupted. Each season, locals still flood the terraces with crystalline mountain water, still plant tender seedlings by hand, still harvest golden grain with sickles polished smooth by generations of use. Children attend modern schools by day, but join elders in the fields at dusk, hands learning what books cannot teach. Tourism may provide welcome income, but rice cultivation delivers life itself. One sustains the other in perfect symbiosis. Some young villagers have ventured to distant cities seeking opportunity, but many eventually return, drawn back by something magnetic about these terraces. Something profoundly deeper than mere nostalgia. It's found in the melodic sound of water gliding through ancient channels, in starlight reflecting off flooded paddies, in the patient wisdom these mountains quietly impart. Local festivals have evolved, certainly. Modern microphones now amplify what drums once proclaimed. Multilingual science in Mandarin and English stand beside springs, considered sacred for millennia. Yet, the fundamental rituals persist. Unbroken offerings still honor ancestral spirits. Elders still lead ceremonial songs. The dragon's backbone never rejected change outright. Instead, it absorbed transformation with extraordinary grace and balance. These terraces endure not because they're frozen in amber, but because they breathe in harmony with time, flexing, adapting, yet never surrendering their essential character. In an era where tradition is routinely sacrificed on progress's altar, Longyi stands as eloquent testimony that progress need not trample beauty underfoot, that ancient wisdom deserves honored space in our contemporary world, especially when that wisdom manifests such breathtaking splendor. The dragon's backbone never presents the same face twice. With each passing season, it sheds its skin, transforms its palette, shifts its temperament. While urban landscapes may evolve over decades, these terraces transform weekly, draped not merely in changing light, but in living rhythm. To witness them through a complete annual cycle is to observe a mountain breathe, Spring arrives like a vast celestial mirror. Newly flooded terraces, in preparation for planting, reflect the sky with such perfect clarity. They create sheets of liquid silver. Clouds drift, dreamlike, not only overhead, but beneath your feet. Visitors speak in hushed tones of walking through heaven itself. Though these fields appear empty, they teem with invisible potential. Beneath the mirrored surface, life stirs with quiet intention. Summer erupts in vibrant green glory. Rice shoots stretch toward sunlight, tall and precise, clothing the hills in cascading emerald. From distant vantage points, the terraces resemble undulating ribbons of velvet flowing in every direction. The atmosphere grows warm and humid with fertility. Frogs serenade from flooded paddies. Farmers stand knee-deep in nurturing waters from first light until dusk, their broad-brimmed hats bobbing like miniature vessels navigating a jade-colored sea. Autumn brings transformation to gold harvest time arrives at last. Ripened rice paints the landscape with amber brilliance as terraces seem to catch fire in the slanting sunlight, glowing with precious grain. Fields ripple hypnotically in passing breezes, while celebratory drums echo through jubilant villages. Extended families gather in joyful reunion. Ancient songs fill the air. Aromatic, sticky rice steams in preparation for feasting. This isn't merely seasonal change. It's communal celebration of life's abundance. The dragon, fully awakened, generously offers its annual bounty. Winter draws the mountain landscape into profound stillness. Terraces empty of water, paddies drained to rest. Occasional snow descends, dusting the intricate steps in delicate white. Other days, crystalline frost adorns stone walls like ethereal lace. No tools disturb the fields, no voices break the silence. The dragon sleeps deeply, gathering strength, patiently awaiting spring's inevitable return. Each season composes its distinctive poem. Spring reflects heaven, summer nurtures growth, autumn rewards with sustenance, winter embraces essential rest. The beauty of Longji lies not merely in its form, but in its eternal rhythm. Watch how it embraces time's passage without struggle. Observe its quiet transformation, confident in its splendor without needing fanfare. Photographers flock here, cameras poised to capture eternity in a single frame. Yet the terraces refuse to be frozen. They pulse, breathe, and whisper ancient wisdom. True beauty dwells not in stillness, but in movement, in practice, in promises renewed with each passing season. The dragon shifts again not with thunderous roars or brilliant flames, but through the gentle language of flowing water, golden grain, and mountain winds. These terraces transcend their function as mere agricultural fields. They stand as a covenant etched into the mountainside, curved, intricate, Kata, promise, transmitted through countless hands across generations, unbroken. The dragon's backbone represents more than agricultural ingenuity or engineering brilliance. It embodies humanity's choice to collaborate with nature rather than conquer it. The ancestors of Longji could have abandoned these challenging slopes, sought gentler valleys, pursued flatter lands. Instead, they remained. They studied each slope's character, listened to the mountain stone, followed water's natural path, and through this harmony, achieved the seemingly impossible, sustaining entire villages on precipitous mountainsides. Every terrace curve holds profound wisdom, not just about rice cultivation, but about patience, legacy, and stewardship. These remarkable structures weren't created in years or even decades. They demanded centuries of persistent vision. No shortcut exists to such harmony. No modern machinery can replicate the knowledge embedded in each stone wall by generations of calloused hands and quiet determination. Yet nothing about these terraces remains static. They live, evolve, and bend with weather patterns, community needs, and changing times. Herein lies their profound secret. They never sought rigidity, but embraced fluidity. Even now, as modernity ascends these hills with technological signals and glowing screens, The terraces remain firmly anchored, K. They transform without vanishing because their roots extend beyond mere soil into story, K. Ritual, and the fundamental act of planting seed with faith in tomorrow's skies. To traverse the dragon's backbone is to witness a sacred covenant between humanity and earth, a contract signed with sweat and sunlight, renewed with each harvest season. It reminds us that progress needn't equate to speed, that greatness rarely announces itself with thunderous declaration. Sometimes it speaks with the gentle voice of water gliding over ancient stone. Perhaps this explains why these terraces resonate with so many souls, from farmers to wanderers to dreamers. Stay, embody what modern life has nearly forgotten. That our most enduring creations arise not from force or haste, but through rhythm, humility, and time's patient passage. The dragon slumbers, its people endure, and the mountain preserves all memory in its eternal embrace. Most visitors to Giza raise their gaze skyward, captivated by the pyramid's towering silhouettes and the great Sphinx's enigmatic stare. Yet, few question what might lie beneath, under shifting sands, beneath Nile waters, under centuries of forgotten currents. Near the ancient village of Abu Rash, just beyond the Giza plateau, an extraordinary tale emerges. It speaks of something massive, weathered, and largely overlooked, an underwater sphinx. Local fishermen have transmitted whispers through generations about this phenomena, smooth contoured shape, with symmetry too perfect for nature's random hand. A feline form half submerged in river sediment and mud. During drought seasons, when Nile waters recede, portions become visible stone curves, deliberate grooves, in what some identify as a carved pore, impossibly eroded, yet unmistakably shaped by human intention. Hidden from tourist trails, it exists in obscurity. No markers, no barriers, no crowds, just dense reeds swaying over brackish waters, shrouded in profound silence. Those few explorers brave enough to venture there describe an almost palpable atmosphere, as if the very air is electrified with ancient memory. Below the murky depths, sophisticated sonar equipment has revealed something extraordinary. Geometric patterns, too precise to be natural, and what appear to be deliberately positioned stone blocks. But what truly challenges our understanding is the audacious claim that this sphinx-like formation submerged near Giza might predate the pyramids by not merely centuries, but millennia. Should this prove authentic, it would completely upend established Egyptian chronology. Current archaeological consensus dates the Great Sphinx to approximately 2500 BCE, yet this submerged structure, if genuinely artificial, could originate from an epoch when the Sahara flourished as verdant grassland and the Nile carved its path through a landscape unrecognizable to modern eyes. Mainstream scholars naturally dismiss it as merely limestone shaped by natural erosion and wishful interpretation. Cat, the peculiar grooves, deliberate curves, Cat, in alignment with specific celestial positions, present a compelling enigma that defies simple explanation. The site remains untouched by archaeological spades. Official institutions have largely maintained a conspicuous silence. Perhaps it's merely natural geology misinterpreted. Or perhaps it represents the most significant archaeological discovery of our age. A testament not merely to Egypt's documented history, but to an entire civilization erased by catastrophic flooding and the relentless passage of time. For now, this alleged underwater sphinx remains in its watery sanctuary, not dormant, but vigilant. One can't help wondering what revelations it might offer, and why so many in positions of academic authority seem reluctant to investigate. What began as whispered local legends transformed into international intrigue during the 1980s when independent researchers and diving teams began publishing their astonishing accounts. Detailed descriptions of a massive, lion-bodied figure partially submerged in the waters near the Giza plateau. The early photographic evidence, though grainy and inconclusive, ignited something that proved impossible to suppress. Intellectual curiosity, tinged with the more dangerous sentiment of doubt in established historical narratives. Among the most passionate early advocates was an amateur Egyptologist who documented observing a weathered, monumental structure beneath layers of silt during a rare drought period. His description was meticulous. This wasn't merely an erosion-shaped rock formation, but a deliberate construction with clear geometric proportions, articulated limbs, bilateral symmetry, and even the weathered suggestion of a sculpted face. Such claims directly challenged orthodox Egyptology, discipline built upon carefully structured timelines and methodical documentation. Conventional scholarship confidently places the construction of both the Giza pyramids and the Great Sphinx at approximately 2500 BCE during Pharaoh Khafre's reign. The proposition of another Sphinx, older and submerged, would necessitate not just revising Egyptian chronology, but reconsidering the entire developmental timeline of human civilization. The academic establishment responded with predictable skepticism, even outright dismissal, without rigorous excavation, reliable dating methods, or proper stratigraphic analysis. Such extraordinary claims could not enter serious scholarly discourse. Many experts contended that the alleged underwater Sphinx was simply limestone, naturally sculpted through millennia of Nile flooding and sediment erosion. They emphasized how Egyptian landscapes frequently create formations that appeared deceptively intentional, the collaborative artistry of wind, water, and time-crafting illusions of purpose. Yet the photographic evidence continued circulating through academic underground channels. Sonar imaging persistently revealed patterns too regular, contours too smooth, and features too suggestive to dismiss outright. This vacuum of official investigation created fertile ground for alternative theorists, authors, documentary filmmakers, and unorthodox historians constructed elaborate narratives around this submerged mystery, proposing it represented evidence of a forgotten pre-Egyptian civilization. Perhaps Atlantean in origin, perhaps indigenous, but pre-dynastic, obliterated by cataclysmic flooding that transformed the Sahara. They highlighted water erosion patterns evident on the recognized Great Sphinx, postulated sophisticated lost technologies, and suggested that what lies beneath the Nile's waters might fundamentally predate our accepted historical record. The controversy intensified, but the archaeological response remained conspicuously absent. No official excavation was authorized. No museum cataloged fragments. The potential Sphinx remained exactly where it had always been, entombed in river silt, suspended between mythological speculation and empirical evidence. The implications of a monument near Giza, predating the pyramids, transcend mere academic curiosity. They represent a potentially revolutionary reconsideration of human achievement. If this underwater formation proves to be deliberately carved rather than naturally formed, then Egypt's historical narrative didn't begin with the 4th dynasty pharaohs. Rather, it originated in deep prehistory when the Sahara flourished as green savanna and the Nile carved a different path through a wetter, more verdant landscape. This hypothesis gained scientific credibility in the 1990s through the work of geologist Dr. Robert Schoch, who conducted extensive analysis of the Great Sphinx itself. His research concluded that the distinctive vertical weathering patterns evident on the Sphinx enclosure couldn't have been produced by wind-driven sand erosion, but instead resulted from prolonged rainfall, heavy, consistent precipitation that hasn't characterized the Giza Plateau since at least 7000 BCE. This geological evidence potentially pushes the Sphinx's origins back by several millennia, well before the first documented pharaonic dynasties inscribed their names in hieroglyphics. If rainfall sculpted the contours of the recognized Sphinx, might water also have concealed an even more ancient counterpart? The alleged underwater Sphinx resides in a depression near ancient floodplains. Modern technologists' satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar reveals tantalizing clues, potential foundations, geometric outlines, and deliberate craftsmanship, all entombed beneath layers of silt and seasonal waters. These findings suggest this enigmatic structure may predate even the Great Sphinx itself, possibly originating from a time before hieroglyphic writing emerged in Egypt. Researchers drawn to this mystery point to what they call Egypt's Dark Ages, the vast chronological chasm between the Ice Age's conclusion and the First Dynasty's emergence. During this shadowy period, the mighty Nile carved new paths across the landscape, while the verdant Sahara transformed into the unforgiving desert we know today. Within this transformative epoch, entire civilizations may have risen, flourished, and vanished, their stories never recorded, their achievements quietly erased by time and elements. Could an ancient, pre-dynastic people have created a monument of such magnitude? Conventional historians dismiss the possibility, yet Göbekli Tepe stands as a humbling counter-argument. This Turkish wonder, constructed around 9600 BCE by hunter-gatherers, showcases massive stone pillars adorned with carved animals, predating Stonehenge by millennia. Might Egypt harbor a similar secret in ancient culture that inscribed its legacy in stone long before the first hieroglyph was conceived? If the underwater Sphinx emerged during this forgotten era, it would shatter our understanding of human history, pointing not merely to lost ruins, but to an entirely lost epic one that perhaps whispered inspiration to Giz's eventual builders, leaving behind not just myths, but a monumental sentinel now slumbering beneath the waters. Stone bears witness. It remembers. From the purported underwater Sphinx, it narrates a compelling story, not merely of passage of time, but of water's relentless dance. Sediment strata, weathering patterns, and flood markers hint at a history that predates the desert's aridity time, before the Nile settled into its present course, before pharaohs etched their names into humanity's consciousness. Geologists examining evidence from the Abu Rash site have identified distinctive erosion signatures, smooth, rounded channels that indicate prolonged exposure to flowing water. These marks weren't created by wind or sand, but by rainfall and movement forces that haven't shaped this landscape for millennia. Similar arguments challenge conventional dating of the Great Sphinx itself, particularly its enclosure. Skeptics of established chronology emphasize that the deep vertical fissures on the Sphinx's surrounding trench bear no resemblance to wind erosion. Instead, they mirror the effects of heavy, persistent, prehistoric rainfall. At the potential underwater Sphinx site, this same geological signature appears, though concealed beneath a shallow flood basin. During periods when the Nile recedes or excavation work occurs, portions of the structure reportedly emerged lion-like contours, shoulders, and a foundation with suspicious levelness. Surveys reveal a geologically dynamic basin with high clay content and evidence of dramatic ancient water table fluctuations. The stone exhibits significant weathering, yet not randomly distributed. The wear patterns follow the structure's form, suggesting intentional carving subsequently altered by submersion. Some sediment layers surrounding the site date to the early Holocene era, when Egypt flourished as a wetter, greener landscape, prone to catastrophic flooding. If a monument had been created then, it might have stood proudly for centuries before being consumed by mud, forgotten by migrating populations, and entombed beneath the Nile's wandering sediments. Critics maintain this is mere coincidence misinterpreted through wishful thinking. Yet, nature rarely creates perfect symmetry. It doesn't carve anatomical features. It doesn't construct aligned foundations or mirror the proportions of another Sphinx just kilometers away. The mystery deepens. If water has indeed obscured this monument, what other treasures has it claimed? More pressingly, how much history remains concealed beneath the surface? If the underwater Sphinx truly exists silent, sculpted, and ancient, why has it evaded excavation? Why does it linger beneath layers of mud and scientific silence, overlooked by archaeologists, ignored by authorities, abandoned to the currents? The answer, like the artifact itself, lurks beneath the surface. Egypt's archaeological institutions maintain vigilant protection over their heritage, justifiably so. The nation safeguards its ancient treasures through stringent protocols, rigorous excavation regulations, and insistence on scholarly consensus. Excavating any site, particularly one challenging established timelines, demands permits, substantial funding, international supervision, and crucially, institutional endorsement. Such approval typically hinges on one unspoken principle: Egypt's historical narrative shall not be rewritten without overwhelming, incontrovertible evidence. Therein lies the challenge. The purported underwater Sphinx has never undergone official, government-sanctioned excavation. Independent researchers, foreign scholars, and unconventional theorists have investigated the area, but without formal support. Their discoveries remain anecdotal, suggestive, but inconclusive. The Nile itself presents additional complications. The river constantly transforms, flooding, receding, and shifting its course over decades. The site where this monument allegedly rests experiences frequent flooding, submerged throughout much of the year. Proper excavation would necessitate draining the area, redirecting water, safeguarding nearby ecosystems, and addressing structural damage from centuries of sediment compression, a project spanning years, if not decades. Political considerations further complicate matters. A discovery of such magnitude, if authenticated, would disrupt more than academic chronologies. It could challenge established narratives, unsettle national pride, and trigger media attention that Egypt might prefer to avoid. The Ministry of Antiquities typically promotes discoveries that reinforce Egypt's grandeur, rather than question its foundational history. Rumors persist that certain institutions may possess more knowledge than they publicly acknowledge that. Preliminary investigations have occurred behind closed doors, without public documentation, peer-reviewed findings, or governmental declarations. However, such claims drifted to the realm of conspiracy theories, and so this potential monument remains entombed. Whether by happenstance or design, it slumbers beneath mud and skepticism. How ironic that in a land devoted to preserving its ancient heritage, one of its greatest mysteries might exist in plain sight, claimed, unexplored, untouched by history's official record. Yet, as the ancients knew well, nothing remains buried eternally. To the ancient Egyptians, the Sphinx represented far more than sculpture. It embodied symbolism, part guardian, part deity, part enigma. With a lion's powerful body and human head, the Sphinx personified strength merged with wisdom, physical might tempered by royal intellect, stood as cosmic sentinel at thresholds where divine and mortal realms converged. The most renowned example, naturally, is Giza's Great Sphinx. Soaring 66 feet skyward, it has maintained its vigilant watch over the plateau for more than 4 millennia, facing the rising sun, standing eternal guard over pharaohs' tombs. Its precise origins remain contested, some attributed to Pharaoh Kafir, while others contend it may be considerably older, its visage resculpted throughout the ages. Imagine the discovery of a second Sphinx, submerged and weathered, potentially predating its famous counterpart, just miles from Giza. Such a find wouldn't merely rewrite a chapter of history, it would transform our entire understanding of ancient Egypt. No hieroglyphic record mentions twin sphinxes. No papyrus scroll depicts this dual guardianship. Yet the Greco-Roman world speaks of balanced sentinels protecting sacred thresholds. Throughout Egyptian sacred architecture, symmetry reigns supreme: paired statues, mirrored obelisks, processional avenues flanked by identical lions. Why, then, would the Sphinx stand alone? Some bold researchers propose an even more revolutionary theory. This submerged Sphinx isn't a copy, but rather the prototype, pre-dynastic original that inspired the Great Sphinx we recognize today. This theory suggests the Sphinx concept originated not with pharaonic architects, but with an earlier, forgotten civilization whose sacred symbols and mythological framework were later adopted and refined. If this monument indeed predates written language, its purpose transcends known dynastic ideologies. It might have served as an astronomical marker, a ritual centerpiece, or a commemoration of cosmic events, floods, or deities lost to time. The lion form itself carries profound symbolism. In ancient Egyptian cosmology, lions embodied the horizon, that liminal space where earth meets sky, where day confronts night. The Sphinx, oriented eastward, perpetually witnesses the sun's rebirth, eternally honoring that sacred moment when darkness surrenders to light. To immortalize this in stone was to capture cosmic order itself. Now contemplate a sphinx carved before the first pyramid, rose positioned, vigilant, expectant. Such a monument wouldn't merely alter archaeological timelines, it would fundamentally transform our understanding of Egyptian origins, suggesting that what we call the beginning of civilization might actually represent the final echoes of something far more ancient. How fitting, then, that this guardian of forgotten worlds might slumber beneath water itself, a symbol of primordial creation and dissolution. As rumors of this underwater sphinx ripple through academic circles and beyond, a profound schism has emerged deeper than any archaeological trench. On one side stands orthodox Egyptology, methodical, evidence-driven, and deeply invested in established chronologies. Opposing this stands a growing coalition of independent researchers, alternative historians, canned, interdisciplinary thinkers, convinced that something extraordinary remains overlooked. Mainstream archaeologists demand tangible proof, rigorous, peer-reviewed analysis, stratigraphic context, inscriptions, and precise dating methodologies. Their caution isn't unfounded. The Egyptian landscape abounds with natural formations that, through weathering and chance, resemble anthropomorphic or zoomorphic figures. Misinterpreting these can propagate historical inaccuracies. Archaeological ethics demand precision. The past, once disturbed, cannot be reconstituted if damaged by hasty conclusions or sensationalist claims. Yet others perceive this prudence as intellectual ossification. Independent investigators, many with credentials in engineering, geology, or other scientific disciplines, a examination of the underwater sphinx and similar anomalies. The highlights sophisticated technological evidence, satellite imagery revealing unnatural symmetry, LiDAR scans detecting geometric foundations beneath sediment layers, and erosion patterns that suggest deliberate craftsmanship rather than natural processes. These researchers also scrutinize the political dynamics surrounding archaeological exploration in Egypt. Tourism generates crucial revenue through established attractions. A newly discovered sphinx, especially one potentially predating accepted historical frameworks, could destabilize carefully constructed national narratives and challenge institutional authority. The resistance, these critics suggest, stems not from fear of pseudoscience, but from fear of fundamental historical revision. The underwater sphinx has transcended mere archaeological curiosity to become a cultural phenomenon. Books, documentaries, podcasts, and international conferences regularly feature this enigmatic structure. It serves simultaneously as evidence for hidden history and as a cautionary tale about confirmation bias. Its proponents campaign for transparent excavation. Skeptics warn against pseudoarchaeology. The truth remains suspended somewhere between these positions, obscured, like the structure itself, beneath layers of rhetoric as dense as Nile silt. This controversy extends beyond academic discourse. It touches something visceral in our relationship with the past. Do we limit ourselves to officially sanctioned knowledge, or do we pursue tantalizing fragments that challenge consensus? The underwater sphinx confronts us with this epistemological dilemma. It represents more than disputed archaeology. It embodies our boundaries of permitted curiosity. And until definitively excavated, both skeptics and believers will continue their impassioned debate over what may be either nothing or everything in natural formation, or a monument that rewrites human history. There's a poignant quality to mysteries hiding in plain sight, clearly when they bear the visage of a lion and gaze upward through murky waters with ancient, silent dignity. Whether the underwater sphinx near Giza proves authentic or illusory, its psychological gravity is undeniable. It awakens a profound human impulse, not merely to discover, but to recover something lost. For the narrative of a forgotten monument resonates with something more fundamental. In archaeology, our intrinsic sense of cultural amnesia. Humanity has always existed among ruins. Metropolises crumble, languages fade into silence, entire civilizations disappear beneath seas, desert dunes, and volcanic ash. We excavate the past not simply for factual knowledge, but for identity. Who were our ancestors? How deep do our cultural roots extend? What wisdom and warning have we forgotten in our relentless march toward an uncertain future? If the underwater sphinx truly exists, Sif hands shaped it before written history began. It transcends mere artifact status, becomes testimony from an unacknowledged chapter of human experience. It stands as a marker from an age when our ancestors perhaps interpreted celestial movements differently, maintained more intimate relationships with natural cycles, or embraced cosmologies we can scarcely imagine. Some theorists attribute it to an advanced prehistoric civilization obliterated by global cataclysm, a hypothesis often relegated to pseudoscience. Yet regardless of theoretical frameworks, the emotional resonance persists. To contemplate a monument created before the first hieroglyph, subsequently submerged by rising waters and erased from collective memory, forces us to confront civilization's fragility. Perhaps this explains the story's enduring power. Kate reminds us that time spirals rather than progresses linearly, that empires exist in but a moment, that even the most enduring stone monuments eventually surrender to environmental forces. More profoundly, suggests the discovery remains an unfinished project, that our planet still harbors secrets beyond academic textbooks. In an era characterized by instant information access and comprehensive global mapping, the underwater sphinx represents something increasingly rare, a genuine mystery, an open question, an enigma resistant to technological resolution. Whether it ultimately proves to be clever natural geology or humanity's oldest monument, it already serves a valuable function by inspiring wonder. Wonder whether history extends deeper than conventionally accepted. Wonder whether mythology preserves fragments of forgotten memory. Wonder what other secrets await just beneath visible reality, patiently waiting for recognition. The underwater sphinx of Giza, whether deliberately carved or coincidentally shaped, whether scientifically validated or permanently debunked, remains where it has always been, submerged beneath water, mud, and temporal weight. It bears no identifying inscription, no official designation, no interpretive signage. Yet, in its very silence, it speaks volumes. For each monument we've uncovered throughout Egypt, countless others remain concealed. Some prove too delicate for excavation with current technologies. Others have been lost to the Nile's perpetual transformations, entombed beneath sedimentary layers and institutional secrecy. And a few, like this controversial sphinx, rest tantalizingly visible, yet unacknowledged, overlooked, not for lack of significance, but because they pose questions that challenge established paradigms. Perhaps therein lies the underwater sphinx's true power, not its dimensions, not its potential age, but its profound silence. It compels us to confront knowledge's limitations and the discomfort of possible oversight. Realistically, it may never receive proper excavation. Political considerations, funding constraints, and academic tradition construct barriers more formidable than any pharaonic tomb. Yet this doesn't diminish its relevance. On the contrary, the structure's very obscurity transforms it into a reflective surface, revealing not just what lies buried beneath sand and water, but what humanity chooses to remember and what we deliberately choose to forget. History beckons us not as a sealed archive, but as a living tapestry, its threads woven across wind-swept dunes and forgotten shores. This intricate pattern awaits a shifting tide, a revolutionary perspective, or simply one courageous inquiry to disturb the settled sands of conventional thought. Perhaps tomorrow the waters will retreat, revealing the Sphinx in its full majesty complete with weathered paws and enigmatic countenance. Modern technology might confirm what ancient legends have whispered through millennia, or the enigma may persist, transmitted through generations like hushed secrets between ancient stones. Yet, whether this underwater colossus proves to be a deliberate monument or geological coincidence, it already fulfills its most profound purpose, igniting our collective imagination. In an era saturated with presumed certainties, this may be its most precious offering. For perhaps antiquity's greatest treasures aren't merely entombed beneath sediment and centuries. Perhaps they slumber within us in our primal need to discover, to preserve memory, and to believe that somewhere beneath rippling waters or shifting sands, the past continues its silent vigil, patiently awaiting rediscovery by those who dare to look deeper.